Hello everybody and welcome to the Delusions of a Disordered Mind YouTube channel coming in from Outpost 1 today. This is a milestone video for us and we're super excited about it. I say that because this is the first video for this channel that we've created and we hope you like it. So if you are into the paranormal and the unknown like we are, please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on your notifications. That way you don't miss out on any of the future content that we're going to be uploading to this channel. So let's get to today's video. The third man factor. It's important to note that looking into this phenomenon isn't just about tracking unexplained experiences, even though that is interesting in and of itself. No, it's about facing the deep mystery woven into what it means to be human. In the corridors of the human experience lies an eerie phenomenon, both unsettling and profound, again known as the third man factor. The third man factor describes instances where people who are experiencing situations involving extreme isolation, danger, trauma, or other life-threatening conditions perceive an unseen presence that offers guidance and solace when those individuals are on the brink of death. The third man factor experience is something that manifests more amongst mountaineers, sailors, explorers, disaster survivors for, well, the obvious reasons. For some, this presence feels like a guardian angel, a deceased loved one, or even a divine being. Yet others interpret it as a coping mechanism of the brain under duress, essentially the mind creating a companion to stave off desperation, fear, or isolation. Is this a manifestation of guardian angels or merely a quirk of our own survival instincts? Now, one of the earliest documented accounts of this phenomenon dates back to Ernest Shackleton and his South Georgia Odyssey. In a desolate void of Antarctica, Shackleton's trans-imperial Antarctic expedition from 1914 to 1917 faced its darkest moments. Their ship, the Endurance, had been claimed by the relentless grip of pack ice, leaving Shackleton and his crew marooned on an ever-shifting frozen wasteland. 4 months, they endured isolation, biting winds, and even dwindling rations. By 1916, the mission had shifted from exploration to sheer survival. Their only hope lay in crossing the deadly Southern Ocean to South Georgia, where a whaling station could provide salvation. As they wandered through the icy terrain, Shackleton began to experience an eerie phenomenon, a presence that he felt that was accompanying them. In his memoir, South, he described it as a constant and unmistakable awareness. He said, "It seemed to me often that we were four, not three." This fourth figure remained silent yet tangible, a steady force guiding them over ridges and through deep ice crevasses. Shackleton did not dare speak about it at the time, fearing that it would unnerve his companions, but years later, Worsley and Crean independently admitted to sensing the same thing. Okay, so the question remains, what exactly did Shackleton see? Well, he didn't embellish his story. I mean, we do know that. Shackleton had no visual hallucinations, and there is no mention of seeing a fourth person. There was no auditory communication. He didn't report hearing a voice or being spoken to, but he did have a strong, persistent sense that there was a fourth person there with them. A calm, silent, and somehow comforting presence of something, of someone. The question has to be asked, was this a phantom figure or a guardian angel, an echo of some divine intervention or a delusional psychological survival mechanism? Shackleton's account was one of the first to document this phenomenon, but it was not the last. For Shackleton and his men, this spectral companion may as well have been a difference between life and death. Shackleton did not actually coin the term the third man factor. The term the third man was actually immortalized by poet and playwright T.S. Eliot in his 1922 poem, The Wasteland, where he penned, "Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together, but when I look up ahead the white road, there is always another one walking beside you." Eliot's haunting words, inspired by Shackleton's account, encapsulated the eerie sensation of an unseen companion during moments of extreme duress. Shackleton's account became the foundation case for what John Geiger later called the third man factor. a felt but unseen presence that appears in life or death situations, offering comfort, direction, or strength in the most extreme situations. So Shackleton's experience may have been the earliest documented account that we know about with the third man factor phenomenon, but it certainly wasn't the last. In the summer of 1933, Frank Smythe, who was an experienced mountaineer, stood at the threshold of glory. Frank had set his sights on becoming the first man to conquer Mount Everest. With his climbing team sidelined due to worsening weather and exhaustion, Smythe decided to attempt the summit alone. None of that was going to stop him. It was an audacious and dangerous move, and one that would test the limits of his endurance, both physically and mentally, but he thought he was up for the task. As Smythe ascended the icy ridges and the vertical cliffs, he found himself utterly alone. There was nobody else around for miles. The air was thin, every breath was a laborious effort. The howling wind carried with it a sense of impending doom, and the jagged peaks surrounding him appeared to be closing in. Somewhere around the 28,000 feet mark, with the summit tantalizingly close yet impossibly far, Smythe began to feel the presence of a companion. The situation was so real and so convincing that at one point, Smythe broke off a piece of his mint cake from his rations and extended it to this invisible companion. The realization that there was nobody there struck him only after the gesture was complete. Yet, the presence did not dissipate. Instead, it remained with him, urging him to press on. Though Smythe ultimately did not reach the summit, he did survive this frightening ordeal and descended the mountain and returned to share his story, which is why we know about it today. The question is, was this companion a fragment of his subconscious mind, a projection of his survival instincts, or something beyond comprehension? The third man factor is just not an experience of the past. In more recent times, we have the story of Ron DeFrancesco and his experience on 9/11. On the morning of September 11, 2001, DeFrancesco arrived at his office on the 84th floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Like any other day, he settled into his routine, unaware that his life and the world was about to change forever. At 9:03 in the morning, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower and chaos erupted. The building shuddered violently, fire and smoke engulfed all of the floors, and panic and fear spread like wildfire. It's near next to impossible to try and place yourself in a position that DeFrancesco was in. DeFrancesco had found himself trapped in a nightmare, and his only option was to escape. Attempts to descend, though, were thwarted by flames and collapsing debris, his colleagues panicking, some even giving into the despair. Overwhelmed by the heat and smoke, DeFrancesco fell to the floor and he was ready to accept his fate, but then something extraordinary happened. In his account, DeFrancesco stated that a voice, a calm, commanding voice, spoke to him. DeFrancesco described it as an external voice and not something that was in his inner thoughts. The voice urged him to stand up and to move, guiding him step by step through the inferno. It directed him to a stairwell that he had not noticed before, and it led him through the flames and the smoke. At times, DeFrancesco stated that he felt a physical force pushing him forward, even when his body wanted to collapse. The presence stayed with DeFrancesco until he emerged, staggering into the street below. Moments later, the South Tower collapsed. DeFrancesco was one of the last people alive to escape the falling tower. To this day, he cannot explain the voice or the presence that saved him. Was it a divine intervention, a manifestation of his will to survive, or something else entirely different? Something that defies explanation. We also have the story of Joe Simpson and his fight for survival. In 1985, climbers Joe Simpson and Simon Yates attempted to ascend the Sierra Grande, which is a remote and treacherous peak in the Peruvian Andes. Their climb was successful, but the descent turned catastrophic. Simpson fell, shattering his leg, and Yates was forced to lower him down the mountain using a rope. When Simpson slipped over a sheer drop and became stranded in mid-air, Yates made the agonizing decision to cut the rope, believing that Simpson was dead. Miraculously, Simpson survived the fall. He wasn't dead. He did land in a deep crevasse, and he was alone, injured, and without food or water, so he faced almost certain death. Yet, in the depths of his despair, a voice emerged. This voice, calm and authoritative and unwavering as he described it, guided him out of the crevasse and down the mountain. It instructed him to crawl, when to rest, and where to navigate the treacherous terrain to make it back to where he needed to go. Simpson later described his experience in his book, The Touching Void. The presence was not comforting or emotional as he described it. Instead, he described it as coldly practical, focusing solely on his survival, and that was it. Over the 3 days, Simpson crawled miles back to his base camp, and his strength, he said, was fueled only by the voice that refused to let him give up. When he finally reached safety, the presence vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Another important experience involving the third man factor involved Stephanie Schwab and her dive into the darkness. In the early 2000s, Stephanie Schwab, a scientist and cave diver, was exploring the underwater cave systems beneath the Bahamas, an area that could best be described as remote, lightless, and seldomly touched by the human experience. Deep beneath the surface, as she was diving, alone, surrounded by the crushing waves of ancient rock and black water, her equipment suddenly failed. Schwab stated that when her oxygen supply faltered, panic set in when she realized how far she was from any hope of rescue. And disoriented in a maze of submerged tunnels, she hovered in a deadly stillness because in that moment she didn't know what else to do. The only thing she had was the light from her headlamp that seemed to be swallowed by the darkness that seemed to breathe. In that moment, when survival felt impossible, something unexpected happened. It was a presence not imagined, not dreamed, but undeniable. A calm female voice emerged in her mind, clear and composed, and telling her to stay alive, to breathe slowly, and to think. It didn't soothe her with emotion, nor did it speak in riddles or mysticism. No, it was direct and focused solely on survival, cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. Stephanie obeyed, and with no sense of direction, low on air, and nearly consumed by fear, she followed the guidance step by step. Against every rational expectation, she found her way out of the cave and survived. Later, reflecting on the experience, Schwab struggled to explain exactly what had happened. There had been no one else in the cave, no external source for the voice that kept her alive, and she rejected adamantly the idea that it was simply her subconscious or a hallucination born of oxygen deprivation. This presence to her felt distinctly other. She came to call it the woman who wasn't there. It never returned, never explained itself, and it never asked her for anything in return. But that one moment between life and death, it had come, unseen, unknown, and impossibly real. These narratives, while strange, beg the question, what lies behind the third man factor? Scientific inquiry provides alternative perspectives. Neurological studies suggest that extreme isolation, stress, and life-threatening situations can trigger the brain to conjure what's described as a sensed presence. This coping mechanism, possibly rooted in our evolutionary past, serves to provide comfort and guidance during times of perilous situations where all hope seems to be lost. Psychologists have explored the idea that the brain, when pushed to its limits, can create a companion, an aid to survival. This phenomenon, while not fully understood, indicates a profound connection between the mind's capacity to endure its ability to generate life-saving illusions. The third man, thus, emerges as a testament to human resilience, a spectral ally summoned from the depths of our psyche that lead us out of the impossible. Science aside, the paranormal explanations for the third man factor suggest that the guiding presence is not psychological. It's not a psychological construct, but an external conscious entity, something beyond the human mind. Many interpret this phenomenon as the intervention of a guiding spirit, a guardian angel, or some type of ancestral protector stepping in during times of extreme crisis to offer direction and strength when all seems lost. In some belief systems, these beings are thought to exist in a separate spiritual plane, always nearby but unable to interact with humans unless specific circumstances are met, such as when the veil between worlds thins, or during near-death experiences, or other heightened emotional states. Now, others suggest that the third man factor could be of a soul tether, a supernatural link between the individual and a higher intelligence or divine source. Fringe theories venture into the metaphysical, proposing that the entity could be an interdimensional being or a projection from a parallel reality, essentially another version of the self reaching across space and time to assist. The important thing about the paranormal interpretations is that they often emphasize how the presence feels distinctly other. Not just a trick of the mind, but a visitor with intention, awareness, and purpose, leaving behind this eerie sense of calm and mystery after the danger has passed, after the person has survived. The third man factor straddles the line between the supernatural and the psychological. Whether viewed as a guardian angel or a manifestation of our own survival instinct, it underscores the profound depths of the human mind. In the darkest moments, when all hope seems to have been lost, this mysterious presence emerges, guiding the individual toward the light, a silent testament to the enduring will to survive. Maybe the third man factor is the mind's final defense, an elegant hallucination woven by the brain desperate to survive, or maybe it's something else, something older than reason, older than flesh. A presence that waits in the silence, unseen, until we stand on the edge of existence when the noise of the world fades away and something else steps in. Science offers explanations rooted in neurons, chemicals, and cognitive dissonance. The paranormal, on the other hand, reaches for angels, spirits, and voices from the beyond. But neither fully capture the truth as felt by those who have lived the experience. That is because those who have encountered the third man don't describe madness or fear. They speak a calm in the face of chaos, of being held by something that should not exist, but to them does. A companion with no face, no name, no need for thanks. It does not come to save us from death. No, that's not the purpose. It comes to remind us that we're not truly alone. Not in the darkest cave, not in the frozen wild, and not in the final seconds before the end. So maybe the third man is not about what is real, but what is about true to the experience. Maybe it's not proof of a soul or a signal from the brain, but a whisper from the quiet place beyond both, where survival and surrender meet. And in that sacred pause between breaths, it tells us what we've always known, but always forget. And that is something walks with us, especially when we cannot walk alone. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I do have one more thing. That is, I would like to hear from you. What do you think about the third man factor experience? And have you ever had a third man factor experience? And if you have, please tell us about it. Comment below. What was it? How did it affect you? And what did it mean to you? If you like this video and you want to see more of our content, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time.